Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, another entry here based on your suggestions. As a quick reminder, this series I wanted to make kind of like a special edition of sorts where I would just go back over the several years of video suggestions and then pick new ones that I have not talked about before. This one has to do with one that was generated sometime last year. It's a cryptid that I think it's been suggested actually several times. The only reason I haven't talked about it is because basically it's another large sea serpent of sorts. And to me, again, those particular cryptids are, if you talk about one, you talk about pretty much all of them. But I did find some interesting information about this creature, whatever it is, because not only is it potentially a sea serpent, but it's potentially also a snake or a very large eel. And it seems to have some supernatural ties to it. Not in the sense like ghosts, spirits type stuff, but more something along the lines of a powerful force on Earth. So I'm talking about the cryptid known as and this is a long name, it's the Inkanyamba, if I'm saying that correctly, which is a sea serpent of sorts found in South Africa. Apparently, even to this day, even there, the people still attribute many natural known causes to this cryptid. So that was also another fascinating trait. So what is the Inkanyamba? Well, it's a creature that's found in a very specific spot, actually several locations there in South Africa, but it is most commonly seen at one place. That's why I also picked this, because I love it whenever information ties a cryptid or a monster to one very specific spot, because the idea that you could visit that location and encounter this creature at one location as opposed to trying to hunt it down over, let's say, multiple parts of the world, that what makes it so fascinating, the idea that you could actually do that. So it's a sea serpent that's found somewhere in South Africa, a place called Howick Falls, which you're looking at a picture of here. So if you're ever down there in South Africa and you happen to be at a location close to Howick Falls, take a little detour, see if you can spend some time there, because if you do, you may get a chance of seeing this creature. So basically, again, it's a very, very large aquatic animal, most likely resembling a snake. The only thing is its head sometimes is reportedly looks like a horse. That could be because it's much larger. Like, let's say the entire creature itself is much larger than your average snake or serpent, or it could be because it's just hard to see. People see it either underwater, or people see it there in the thick brush of the forest there in South Africa. So what they interpret as something else could be completely different, and it just happens to look like the head of a horse. Others, though, report it as being, let's say, just your average snakehead. And then also, as I mentioned, there's another portion of people that think that this thing is actually not just potentially a large snake, but also a large unknown and unclassified eel. If you've seen eels, of course, they are very distinct looking. They kind of look like snakes, but they have a much thicker body. They have a much more pronounced head. Obviously, the mouth itself is quite distinct because of those large serrated teeth. So this thing also apparently resembles a giant eel to some people. As far as its length, I was reading various reports. It seems like it has a variation of its length. It could be over 20 feet long, and in some instances, based on at least what the supernatural aspect of this thing and what it can do, it can be much larger. And I'll explain that here in a few minutes. If we go that route, as far as this thing being that large, it could be actually one of the largest cryptids in the world. So as how far back this thing goes and the tales tied to it, a long, long time ago, there are cave paintings that have been found at a place called the KwaZulu-Natal area. We're talking about cave paintings from who knows how long back, thousands of years probably, because these are from aboriginals, people that were originally from that country. So that is a very, very long time back. And those paintings depict these creatures as being referred to as the quote-unquote rain animals. And this is why. This is the supernatural part that's tied to this creature. Apparently, the idea is that this creature can create on its own some kind of severe meteorological event, like let's say something along the lines of a very strong thunderstorm or a very strong, in some cases, tornado. Like we're talking like extremely strong, not just your average storm that you just happen to gauge outside and say, oh, okay, there's a thunderstorm. No, in this case, this is a huge, brutal storm. So much so that, in fact, as recently as 1998, it has been blamed for a very severe storm that hit that area of KwaZulu-Natal, and thousands of people lost their homes. And the way that this thing does it is, apparently, not only does it, of course, live in those waters, but whenever it decides that it wants to create these meteorological events, it can take to the sky, and it does it almost annually, if I'm not mistaken. And then I don't know how it does it, but it starts twirling around so much so and so fast. Either people see it or people don't. But it creates a very giant tornado, and when this happens, then that's when those severe storms occur. Although an interesting, I guess, fact about those trips that it does into the sky to create those storms, sometimes it's not as a repercussion of, let's say, it creating vengeance against people, because the way the tales say, this thing, if people are trying to hunt it and trying to look for it specifically and trying to capture it even, then that's when it kind of like does an attack of some sort, kind of like a rebuke. It essentially does these annual trips to the sky to remind them that, hey, this is what you're going to deal with if you decide to capture me. But interestingly enough, apparently it also does this because it's trying to find a mate. These creatures are apparently very rare, whatever these giant sea serpents or eels or snakes are. They're very, very rare, and so it spends much, much time trying to find another kin of sorts, another mate, so that way they can get together. So that's also another interesting fact. The only other thing that seemed like it stood out was sometime in the late 90s, apparently there was a serious expedition of some sort, something where I think it was even the government that was even of that area that was trying to find this creature, trying to not necessarily capture it, but at least document it and place it someplace. The way it was described is it would have been in a area that would have been isolated, so that way this thing, I guess, would have ensured that it would not cause any more trouble. But the locals there in the area, they're called Zulus, they were so outraged over this, because even if it was done for its protection, because they were trying to place it into some kind of environmentally protected area, some kind of isolated area, they were so outraged over the prospect of this creature, this Inkanyamba, taking some kind of retribution or some kind of vengeance for even the thought of it, that they protested, that they petitioned their council. They were able to successfully stop this expedition from happening. So imagine that, the seriousness of that matter. Like, imagine a cryptid, so much people outraged over the idea of, let's say in this case, capturing it, that they can persuade a local government to do that. Imagine that happening here. Like, think about it for a second, that the huge ramifications of it. Like, imagine if there was some kind of team from a state that decided, you know what, we're going to capture Bigfoot, and then like, let's say the community surrounding that area said no, absolutely not, and they were able to petition a law or something to prevent it. That's pretty huge. I mean, that's not a small thing. So that was also very, very interesting to find. They did not want any unexpected, in their words, carnage to spill over any of the villages, even if it was, again, for good purposes. So all in all, pretty interesting stuff. There's also other areas that this creature is found. There's a place called the Mid-Mar Dam, which covers about 500 square miles, that this location is also found. And then other areas, there's another one called a Dargle area of the Midlands. I don't know exactly what that is, but there seems to be another location where this creature is found. But that's it. That's all the information really that stands out about the Inkanyamba. If anyone has any more interesting tales tied to it, that'd be really great to hear. Huge, huge differences, again, between what it could be. It could be a snake, it could be an eel, it could be a serpent, it could be something else entirely different. And as far as its size, let's say 20 feet tall, or it could be, in other cases, hundreds, because if you're needing something to create a giant thunderstorm that encompasses in a huge area, in this case South Africa, you're talking about something that's going to be much, much larger. And again, the supernatural aspects tied to it, all fascinating stuff. So, all right, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.